Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Bucket Ponds and my name is Terry. Today we are building a Slender Spike Rush nursery. This is a nano aquarium meant to raise one of my most favorite plants, Spike Rush. Yes, here we go. So Spike Rush is not generally used in the aquarium hobby, and I think that's a shame because it is so durable. It's so hardy. It's very hard to kill. It seems to accept any type of lighting or water parameters. It just keeps on growing. It's very reliable. So I'm going to use what I call the shell method here for this spike rush. I've never tried this before, but I'm going to roll up a clump of spike rush taken from one of my other tanks, stick it right there in the seashell, and use that to hold it at the bottom of the tank. In theory, it should work out quite well, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, you know, guys, Spike Rush has been really reliable for me. When that hurricane hit us, we lost power for like 2 weeks, and a lot of my projects did fail. But I noticed that tanks with Spike Rush, they did just fine, as long as they had a little light. So, you know, this shows me that Spike Rush is one of our best plants, one of our strongest plant species, and I need to use it more in the future. I want to make our projects immune to power outages. I want to thrive, you know, no matter what happens to society around us. And so I plan on growing a lot of spike rush in this project and then using it next year to build other stuff, you know, as the foundation. So I'm just kicking it around a little bit, spreading it out. And I did add some marble chips in here, just more of an aesthetic reason, but it won't hurt the water parameters either. Now I'm adding some bladder snails into this project. Mostly young bladder snails, a couple adults. Generally, the adults might not do so well when you transplant them into a new tank. And now we're going to add some microfauna as well. This is a mixture of paramecium and my own small white detritus worms that we cannot identify. We don't know much about them. But just like the spike rush, they have been with us since the very early days of bucket ponds, since the very beginning. And I'd like to see them in this project. These worms and snails will act as the digestion system of the aquarium. They'll break down any loose food particles, anything edible. They'll turn that into material that bacteria can feed on, and the bacteria will eventually turn that into fertilizer for our plants. Here's a great look at spike rush as you will actually see it out in the world. It can grow underwater or on land. The aquatic version is very, very hard to identify. I had to rely on old botanical drawings from the 1700s. Yes, it was a lot of fun. But yes, this plant is just not well known. It's not widely used. Growing like this, submerged in an aquarium, it will eventually fill up the tank. It will reach up and out of the tank and look a lot like one of those troll dolls with green hair. Yeah. So I'm adding a couple pieces of floating spike rush just because I had some on hand and to give you a better idea of what those little nodules look like, those knots. You can see 2 of them there, 3 of them floating around on top. And now I'm going to feed the project. There are snails and worms in here, and they need food. This is a clean tank, so there's not much food for them to eat. So I'm adding some fish food flakes, some of which I had ground up to be very small particles. They'll get in there, break down a little bit, and then our pets will begin to feed. Now, originally I thought, you know, I'll grow spike rush in the water, and I'll grow spike rush in a little plant cup on top. And my line of thought was that this plant cup would absorb humidity from the aquarium and, you know, use that to keep itself moist. And I'd be able to grow spike rush on land, essentially, here in this cup as well. Not a bad idea. And, you know, I'm just trying to double and triple and quadruple our real estate for growing spike rush. You know, I want to have as much of this as possible so I can use it in big projects next year. But I didn't like the way this little cup turned out, so I came up with a different idea, and I'll show you here in a moment. Skipping ahead to day 3, here's my new idea. So we're going to use this platter thing that I got from the dollar store, and we're going to use this as the base of our aquarium. Instead of putting plants on the lid, I'm going to put plants on the bottom, and you'll see what I mean here in a moment. I've also added an air line for this tank. and a sponge filter, a tiny sponge filter. I have small, tiny ram's horn snail species in here, and they seem to rely heavily on oxygenated water. I don't think they can breathe air like the bladder snails can, so yeah, they needed an air pump. And now I'm just adding potting soil to the platter. I would like to use some of our material from the oasis instead, but there's still a tree on top of the oasis right now. And I've been sick, you guys. I've been too sick to do much anything. It figures, you know. I'm just, hopefully my voice doesn't sound too bad. I'm still coughing really, really bad. But starting to get past it, you know. Got to keep going. I'm just happy I can make videos, and I hope the audio isn't too bad. So I'm just using some potting soil here. It's what I had on hand in the fish room, and it will do just fine. The goal is to grow Spike Rush in the aquarium and then take cuttings and plant them into the base. Slowly, exponentially increasing our Spike Rush that we are growing. For now, I'm going to add some moss onto the base to keep everything moist and keep it covered. This is moss from the mini moss farms, which you guys may remember. One of the moss farms got pretty much destroyed by the hurricane, crushed almost. So I'm using the moss here just because I have to put it somewhere. You know, I don't want to lose it. But the moss farms are moderately successful. I had a small problem with fungus and lack of springtails, but the moss itself was growing quite nicely. It's definitely made more, and that was the goal. So for now, I'm going to use this moss here as a cover on the soil, as a cap. And as Spike Rush grows in the aquarium, I will plant it among the moss. I may pull the moss out over time. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think this will work out quite nicely and look pretty cool too. Now here in the moss, there are some little friends, some surprises that we might have forgotten about. I'll have to work with them too, and you'll see what I mean here in just a second. For now, we're going to moisten the moss in the soil with a little water from our tank. I'm taking water right here at the air pump to hopefully not suck up any of our microfauna, thinking the bubbles would probably push them away, you know. And again, I'm just getting everything nice and wet. And that's because we have some friends in here, including earthworms. Yeah, so I've been raising earthworms in the mini moss farms for about 8 months. They're doing very well. They're very healthy. And they should be fine in this platter as well. I don't think they'll try to get out of there too much. As long as they have food and water, they really shouldn't care. If they do, they'll be out on this tray, and I should be able to catch them if they don't dry out. So yeah, we'll just add our worm friends in here. I wanted to throw one into the aquarium. I know that sounds cruel, but some worm species, some earthworms, can live for a long time underwater. And they can even live indefinitely down there. But many earthworm species will only live for about a couple weeks at most. So I don't want to do that on the off chance they get in there and die and poison the tank. But that got me thinking, you know, imagine our microfauna given access to a steak dinner like an earthworm. Imagine the feeding frenzy that would commence. And that shows me that we could probably build an aquarium capable of eating earthworms in the future. Something to think about. But not right now. Those are my earthworms, they're my babies, and I'm not going to kill them. And I'm just adding some stones in here just for visual aesthetics and, you know, for any little friends that might be in the moss. They may enjoy some hiding places and things like that. Yeah. So I will be capturing the most of our friends from the moss and planting them, transplanting them into some new mini moss farms. I'll include a link to the original moss farms in the build video. And next, after this, maybe next week, I should have a video up of the moss farms being rebuilt. It's a lot of fun, and it's something I had to do. This moss will grow underwater. I could have thrown some in here and had it grow, but I don't want to compete with the Spike Rush. I want to see it accelerate and grow. Now I am just planting some small Spike Rush plants into the base. Just, right there in the moss. It should be fine. At this point, we're able to grow this moss, and I'm not too worried about using it in projects like this. Now, it's not going to die or anything. As long as I mist it every so often, this moss will live just fine and continue to look cool as the place setting of our project. And skipping ahead to day 5. So on day 5, I added some frog bit. Yeah, I wanted to add some plants to help control the water parameters to help keep the tank nice while the spike rush slowly overcame its shock from being transplanted and cut. Here's a look at our first bladder snail egg sac in the aquarium, and that always makes me happy. It's kind of a ritual, you know. When I build something new and I see some eggs pop up very quickly, it just makes my day. Shows me the bladder snails are fully accepting of this project. But don't take that the wrong way. Bladder snails are accepting of any parameters. You could give them a little mud puddle and they'd be in there laying eggs and making babies, you know, that's what they do. But still, it makes me very happy to see them, and these are all future members of our snail population. You may not know this, but here at Bucket Ponds, I have something called the Bladder Snail Breeding Program, where I am slowly crossing many different strains of bladder snails of the same species, Phycella acutia. But I'm crossing all these different bladder snails together to create, not hybrids, but I want to create genetic diversity. I want to make sure that they are not inbred at all. They have a very strong gene pool to work with, and that leaves us with very healthy snails that are more disease resistant. They're more able to handle changing water parameters, temperatures, and things like that. So I like to think that we have the best bladder snails around, but that's just my own little personal boast, you know. But here, looking at the tank, I can see the sponge filter is failing. It's functional, but the little suction cup meant to hold it down is not working. And anything with a suction cup just does not work for me. Internal power filters, things like this, suction cups, no good. I don't know, is that how it is for you guys too? Can you use anything with a suction cup in your aquarium? Or is it just universal? Looking at the frog bit, one of the roots did get stuck on the glass here when I added it to the tank. And I noticed this very amazing structure here. All these little fibrous strands coming off of the root system. This frog bit was given to us by a friend from Florida. Thank you, Dina. I say that almost every time we use it on the channel. But it's doing very well. And yeah, I'm going to tuck that root system back down into the water. And here's a look at what those roots can look like underwater. It's really interesting, actually. It's capturing a lot of small particles and not quite like a net, but it's definitely feeding on things in the aquarium. Down here at the lower parts of the tank, I have created a counterweight for our cucumbers. I don't want those cucumbers to float. I want to sink them at the bottom of the project. And I've done that in a very easy way by just running a stick through it. A waterlogged twig from the Moss Farms was perfect for holding down our cucumber. And you get a good look at the spike rush as well. It's actually looking very nice in there. But you don't want your cucumber slices to float because that will attract fruit flies and things like that. But if you can keep it submerged, which is something I've been trying to figure out for a long time, your snails will eat it and it'll be food for the aquarium and not food for the flies, you know. So that's very important. But wow, the tank's looking great. We have some very hungry snails diving down there. And yeah, I'm not disappointed with it. Now, I would like to wean the tank off of that air pump. I don't want to run an air pump on this thing because if the power does go out again, you know, that air pump, if the tank relies on it completely, then the tank will crash. Things will die. But I think there's a better way. For now, though, we have some more little friends in the moss. This is a tiny millipede, I believe, and they've been with us for about 8 months now. And they're really cool, but they are trying to escape from this project. I did not imagine that our millipedes had survived the destruction. So, yeah, I have to plan accordingly next time. But for this project, I'm just going to wrap it in some shrink wrap that will help to keep them in there without hurting them. And I'm sure they could get out given enough time. But this will hold them for a few days while I run off and build some new moss farms. Then I can capture those millipedes and put them into the new projects, and we can remove this plastic. For now, though, it kind of looks cool. Looks like it's been gift wrapped or something, right? So let's let it sit for a few days. Day 10, yeah. And I just finished building another moss farm here. That's where all that water came from. That's not from this project, so don't worry about that. But we're going to rip this plastic off and set it to the side. I think I can use it for another project later on. I'm not happy with the shrink wrap. I wasn't even going to show it to you guys, but I wanted to be completely honest and open, about everything I do with this aquarium. I want you to know exactly what I know about this project. So we got to get this sponge filter out of here. That thing just sucks. I forget the brand, but you can get them at Walmart, but don't. Do not buy them. They're bad. But I'm going to pull that out of there with my extra long tweezers after we capture our little millipede buddy and get him into the new project. There's at least 3 or 4 of them in here, probably more. And again, they've been with us about 8 months now. And that's almost at the point where I consider them to be pets, part of the bucket ponds family. But I need to get them to breed. That's the main thing. First you get them to live. If I get a species to live with us long term, that's great. And then once I can get them to reproduce, then I consider them officially part of the bucket ponds creature collection, the bucket ponds family. So I'm very excited to get them in and to figure them out. Maybe you guys might know like how to get millipedes to breed. Is it like a question of temperature? Does the substrate have to be much deeper? I don't know. I know they don't like my shovel. They do not like my shovel at all. And I noticed that if I cast a shadow over them, they act very differently. So I'm careful not to, get my shadow over its face or its head. But they're beautiful little animals, and I look forward to seeing them in our future terrariums and, all sorts of stuff. So with a little help from the giant finger monster, I'm able to coax it into the shovel and thus into the new moss farm. So there we go. And we'll see him again in the future, I'm sure. But for now, they'll be living in the moss farm, which is purpose-built to contain them. And I won't have to use any shrink wrap or anything. I'll have a build-up for the original moss farms, a link for that in the description. And I'll actually have a new build for the moss farms coming up very soon. But here's the tank. It's very green at this point. And while that's okay, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It does make viewing difficult, so I'm going to have to do a water change. First, we need to get this sponge filter out of here. And because they suck so much, I've cannibalized the parts to build a little intake filter. I'll be using this to make a water change here on the tank, get that green water under control, and that little sponge will prevent any microfauna from being sucked into my water change, into the tubing here. Yeah, so if nothing else, I've used that sponge filter in a new, unexpected way. This takes hours and hours though, you guys, so I'm going to have to get some larger tubing and modify the setup a little bit. But here we go, the tank has been drained. All but the very lowest portions of the aquarium. And, down there we have all of our ostracods and bladder snails and everybody all concentrated into a small area, which is perfect. I don't seem to have sucked any of them out with the water change, and now we can just add fresh, clean water back into the project. Now, refilling like this, I don't have any sand or dirt down there, so I'm not worried about stirring things up. I actually want to stir it up a little bit. And yeah. So there's a nice clean water change. I will have to do a weekly water change on this project just because our green water is so aggressive. I'm now pulling some of the frog bit out of here because I don't need it. We'll put it into another aquarium. But the spike rush is starting to grow and starting to overcome its challenges from being transplanted. So as the spike rush develops and begins to take over, I can remove a lot of the floating plants that I included as a stopgap measure, as a temporary filter, you could say. But yeah, the tank looks pretty good, you guys. I'm pretty happy with this. I am starting the overfeeding process where I'll give them more and more food until we establish very large populations of snails and worms in here. And with our old handy dandy flashlight, you'll get a better idea of what this tank looks like inside. My camera, it's not bad, but it can't capture everything. Like, just look at that. Look at all that spike rush in there. All of that based off the little rolled up tube shape that I stuck in there and a couple we had floating at the top. So yeah, Now you see all these bubbles, this is actually from that initial refill. This is not photosynthesis, not yet anyway. So don't get too excited. But we have a lot of growth in here. And I noticed a lot of our ostracods are hanging around the seashell at the bottom. Yeah, and you can see quite a bit of activity in here. Honestly, I'm not too upset with the tank. But here we are about 12 hours later, and we do have pearling on our spike rush. That is it, you guys. This is what we needed to see. Yes, and this is not from the water change or the refill. This is from the plant producing photosynthesis. And, you know, just a while back, my buddy Clay was showing me some of his tanks with beautiful pearling plants inside. And I'm like, man, why can't I get that to happen in my projects? You know, I see it a little bit occasionally. Well, we got it to go in. Got all tongue-tied. We got it going here, you guys. So thank you, Clay, for inspiring me to do a little better. You need that, you know. So now I have our counterweight attached to our cucumber slice. I'm going to feed them again. And, you know, thinking about that stuff, guys, you know, you do need each other. We do need each other, not just for inspiration, but for encouragement, for, you know, partnership, for that sense of belonging, you know. You might live in a town where nobody does any aquarium stuff. You might feel weird. You know, you got nobody to talk to. You know, maybe your neighbor does some fish tank stuff, but, you know, maybe that was 30 years ago. And you look around like, damn, you know, I want to share this with someone. Well, come on, you know, come on to YouTube, come online, look for us. We're out here on aquarium forums, we're on Reddit, we're on YouTube, you know, and you can find your community. You can find your friends, and you can learn to do better. You can inspire yourself based off other people's projects or just general communication. You know, just talking with your buddy about an idea or something. It helps a lot. It makes it really fun. So, highly suggested. And thank you, Clay, for boosting me up a little bit, getting me some ideas. But yeah, guys, here's the Spike Rush Nursery. You may hear me refer to this as the SRN in future builds and future projects. But I am building this for the future. I want to, you know, next year, I have some big ideas for aquariums and projects. And I want to show you like, oh, hey, guys, this is some Spike Rush from the nursery. And I'll include a link in the description, and that link will be this video. Yeah. So you see a lot of our snails hanging out above the surface right now. As the plants produce that oxygen, as they crank out those bubbles, our snails will begin to dive back down into the tank. No problem. They're just a little confused by the water change and all the action today. And my old phone here helps a little bit with showing some of the lighting. And now we're just going to mist the moss. Notice I hold my my squirt bottle upside down. I got so sick of fiddling with this thing, I just ripped the tubing out of it, and I just use it upside down. So much better. So much easier. Here we have a very simple lid for the aquarium. There we go. And that lid will prevent any flying insects from getting in there. A lot of times, you know, I've seen the same conversation with others, talking to people like me, jar aquarium people. Somebody will say like, oh, wow, aren't you worried about mosquitoes? Or that must be to stop mosquitoes, right? And no, it's flies. We worry about flies, you guys. We don't worry about mosquitoes. Moth flies, drain flies, they're horrible. Here's our last shot, you guys. I just wanted to show you that I do have some of the tiny ram's horns living in this project. And with all the plants producing so much oxygen, they are diving down below very happily. They seem to rely heavily on oxygenated water. I don't think they can breathe air like bladder snails, so having them down there is a good sign. Hopefully they'll be breeding for us too. So thanks for watching, guys. Big thank you to our YouTube members and our Patreon supporters, and especially to friends of the channel. You know who you are. You guys do a lot to keep me in good spirits and stuff, you know, through the hard times, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you everyone for watching. We're all a big community. We're all friends here. Let's lift each other up and not, you know, beat each other down. Does that make sense? I hope so. I'm not feeling too great though, you guys. I am still sick, so forgive me if the video sounds a little weird or if I got a little off track here and there. Have a great day. I'll see you again soon. I have the Moss Farm videos probably coming up next, so see you then.